Today, we're plunging into the complex, really dynamic economic landscape of India.
It's a fascinating topic.
Absolutely. Especially when you consider India is currently the world's fifth largest economy by nominal GDP. That's, the raw value, and third largest by purchasing power parity.
Which adjusts for cost of living differences.
Exactly, making it one of the fastest growing major economies globally. So, our mission for you today is to unpack the significant, sort of deep seated challenges that are really hindering India's progress despite this impressive growth, and explore just how interconnected these issues truly are.
And our deep dive today is entirely based on insights from a new book, Bharat, The Development Dilemma by C.A. and Anil K. Jain.
Right.
The book offers a really detailed research-backed look at these challenges, their history, current impact, future prospects. It's got critical analysis across economic policies, political influences, finance, socioeconomic conditions, the whole picture.
Yeah. And the author wants to bridge an information gap, offer solutions.
That's the clear intent highlighted, yes.
Yeah.
To provide actionable ideas for India's path forward.
Okay, let's unpack this then. India presents this core paradox, doesn't it?
It really does.
A rapidly growing economy, incredibly diverse, yet it consistently grapples with these persistent, enduring challenges. The book identifies over 20.
Over 20, yeah. It's quite comprehensive.
Wow. So before we dive into specifics, what's the sort of broader context the book sets? How do we start understanding these complexities?
Well, what's interesting is the preface notes. India's journey started post-independence with a mixed economics model, some state control, some private enterprise.
Okay.
Then came that landmark economic liberalization in 1991. That really transformed its integration with global markets.
Huge shift.
Massive. And just for a quick overview of the structure now, agriculture is about 16-18% of GDP, but employs over 40% of the workforce. Still huge employment.
40%, yeah.
Industry is around 25-30% of GDP. And then the services sector dominates over 50% of GDP. And India is a global leader there, especially in IT services.
Right.
It's against that backdrop that these challenges really emerge and, bite.
That context definitely helps frame it. So let's start with what feels like a really foundational challenge for any developing nation. Poor infrastructure.
Critical.
When the book talks about how inadequate infrastructure acts as an obstruction, what's a specific ripple effect? Maybe something less obvious than just slower goods movement.
That's a great question. It's absolutely critical.
Yeah.
Beyond the obvious delays, the book suggests inadequate infrastructure, transport, energy, water, sanitation, digital car. It fundamentally puts a ceiling on India's growth potential.
A ceiling, okay.
It stops the nation from fully leveraging its massive workforce and, its domestic market. And what's particularly striking is the sheer scale of the money shortfall. There's a substantial 30-40% funding gap in the unawarded 11 lakh crore needed just for 2019-2025.
Wow, 30 to 40% gap.
For the national infrastructure pipeline. And just to put that in perspective for listeners, 111 lakh crore is over 1.3 trillion US dollars.
Over $1.3 trillion needed. That's staggering. And the book points to specific examples, right? Projects getting stuck.
Exactly. You see ongoing delays for big projects like the Navi Mumbai International Airport, the Mumbai-Ahmedabad bullet train.
Right, I've heard about those.
And these often get bogged down by bureaucratic inefficiencies, really complex land acquisition issues. It's tough. And then to compound that, the World Bank estimates corruption can inflate project costs by a staggering 20-30%.
20 to 30% lost to corruption. Wow.
Yeah, draining resources that could be used for, more crucial development.
So it's not just about these grand projects failing, but how these fundamental bottlenecks affect the daily lives of millions, like traffic jams, water access.
Precisely. You've got to imagine the congestion on India's huge 6.3 million kilometer road network, or the issues with its 67,000 kilometer railway system.
Yeah.
It's not just an economic abstract, it's the daily grind, commerce, people moving around. It directly hits productivity and quality of life.
And speaking of critical resources, the book highlights this severe paradox around water scarcity.
Yes, that's another big one.
India's got numerous rivers, yet vast amounts of fresh water just flow untapped into the sea. What's the core of this inefficiency the book points to?
Well, the book shares a really critical detail. Modern India loses around 0% of its fresh water annually.
40%, that's huge.
Huge. due to wastage and inefficient management. And this inefficiency has really wide-ranging impacts. Agriculture suffers from low irrigation coverage.
Which needs a lot of water.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Industries face critical shortages, major cities experience recurring water crises, and then you have the decline of aquatic ecosystems. So it's a systemic problem, even with natural abundance.
So, despite, historical knowledge of water management, I imagine that exists, why is this still such a challenge today?
Well, historically, there were impressive efforts. Under the Mughals, later the British projects like the Ganga Canal, the Periyar Project, really quite advanced for their time.
Okay.
But the book highlights that even with modern initiatives, like the Jal Shakti Abhiyan, the National Water Mission, bureaucratic inefficiencies often prevent optimal use of these vital resources.
So it's an execution issue again.
It seems to be a recurring theme, yes.
Yeah.
Good intentions, policies are there, but the execution gets tangled up.
That makes sense. Now, let's talk population pressure. The immense strain isn't just felt in crowded cities, right? It links back to resources like water, too.
Directly.
The book calls population a double-edged sword. You've outlined the pressures, but we often hear India's young population is its greatest asset, the demographic dividend. How does the book reconcile that potential with these challenges?
That's a really crucial point. And yes, India's young demographic is potentially a massive asset for future growth. But the book outlines the specific issues from unmanaged population growth.
Okay, unmanaged growth.
Yeah, it leads to higher unemployment because the economy just can't create jobs fast enough for everyone entering the workforce.
Right.
It puts immense stress on urban infrastructure, roads, housing, sanitation that simply wasn't built for current numbers. Then there's the overuse of natural resources like water, forests, land, and inadequate healthcare and education systems that struggle to keep up with the sheer scale.
So it makes existing problems worse.
Exactly. It exacerbates poverty, environmental degradation. The book talks about a surplus labor force, people who aren't fully utilized or don't have the right skills for the jobs available.
And family planning efforts. They've been around for a while.
They have since 1952, actually.
Yeah.
But the book notes challenges persist. There are regional disparities in success rates, sociocultural resistance in some areas, and all this hinders the goal of population stabilization, which in turn makes it harder to realize the full economic potential of that demographic dividend.
Right. It's about harnessing that potential, not just having the numbers. Okay, let's shift gears to black money.
Yes, the shadow economy.
A pervasive issue defined as unreported income from illegal stuff like corruption, tax evasion. You have to consider how this fundamentally undermines official development efforts. Beyond just lost tax revenue, what's the deeper societal cost the book identifies?
Well, beyond the obvious hit to government coffers, the book vividly illustrates how black money erodes something fundamental.
Trust.
Trust in institutions.
Exactly. Trust in government, in the financial system, in fairness. It fosters deep inequality, undermines legitimate businesses that do pay taxes, and it diverts resources from essential public services, education, healthcare, infrastructure.
And it pops up in specific sectors.
Oh, yes. What's truly striking is the statistic mentioned that real estate is a major hotspot. Around 30% of property transactions are estimated to involve unaccounted cash.
30%, that's huge.
It distorts markets, makes housing unaffordable for so many regular people. It's a massive issue. Now, the book does discuss various government strategies to combat this. There's the Benami Transactions Act, targeting property held in someone else's name.
Right, hiding the real owner. Precisely. Also, the push for digital payments and, of course, the big demonetization initiative back in 2016.
Which is controversial.
Very. And the book emphasizes that while these steps are part of the picture, a long-term, broader approach is still very much needed. Things like simpler tax laws, stronger enforcement mechanisms.
And tackling the root causes.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It needs a multi-pronged attack. Okay, shifting focus now to human capital. The book emphasizes how poor quality education obstructs progress, even though enrollment numbers look better.
Yes, access has improved, but quality is the real concern.
So what are the specific systemic issues here, beyond just kids being in school?
Well, the deficiencies detailed are quite stark. Inadequate infrastructure in many schools, especially rural ones, an outdated curriculum often focused on rote learning, just memorization.
Not critical thinking. Not enough critical thinking, exactly. And a pervasive issue of underqualified or undertrained teachers. The book points to reports like ACER, the Annual Status of Education Report, and EDS, the National Achievement Survey. They consistently show alarming results. Like, many grade 5 kids can't read a grade 2 text or do basic math.
That's worrying for the future workforce.
Extremely.
Yeah.
And a key point the book makes is funding. India allocates only about 3.1% of its GDP to education.
How does that compare?
It's considerably lower than many developed countries, and even some developing ones. And this directly leads to low employability, significant skill gaps.
Which businesses then complain about.
Right, and reduced global competitiveness. The rapidly growing coaching industry in India, huge private tutoring market.
Oh yeah, it's massive.
That's a clear indicator of the gaps in the formal schooling system. Parents feel compelled to spend extra just to compensate for what the public system isn't delivering.
That really highlights a critical gap between potential and reality. And speaking of business growth, the book pinpoints another hurdle: India's often rigid labor laws.
A complex area.
Now, it sounds technical, but it impacts job creation. It seems obvious complex laws deter investment, but surely these laws were put in place initially to protect workers. Does the book discuss that balance?
It absolutely does. That's the crucial tension. These complex regulations, many dating back to the colonial era, were intended to protect workers. That was the goal.
Okay.
However, the book argues that in practice, they make hiring and firing very cumbersome, very difficult, which ultimately deters investment, especially foreign investment, and reduces productivity, particularly for small and medium-sized enterprises, the SMEs.
Which are the backbone of most economies.
Exactly. And this rigidity, ironically, pushes a large segment of the workforce into the informal sector.
So they end up with less protection.
Precisely. They lack the crucial security and benefits the laws were supposedly designed to provide. It's a real paradox. Now, the government has initiated reforms, consolidating over 40 central labor laws into 4 simpler codes.
Trying to streamline it.
Yes, the aim is to simplify compliance, encourage formalization of the workforce. But the inherent challenge remains. How do you balance crucial worker rights with the flexibility businesses need to grow and innovate? It's a very, very tightrope walk.
Definitely a tough balancing act. Okay, finally, let's step back a bit. The book looks at India's historical policy choices, specifically its post-independence adoption of a socialist economic model.
Right, the early decades.
So, connecting the dots, what does this all mean for India's current challenges? How does that history play into today?
Well, this state-led planning approach, with nationalization of industries, public sector dominance, it was initially aimed at addressing poverty, ensuring equitable distribution, noble goals.
Sure.
But the book argues it ultimately led to significant inefficiencies, pervasive red tape, the famous license raj,
Yes, the license raj.
and just sluggish economic growth for decades. This approach culminated quite dramatically in the 1991 balance of payments crisis. India nearly defaulted. That was the huge wake-up call.
Their little crisis point.
Absolutely. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, you see parallels with other socialist economies that face similar issues. The book highlights how the post-1991 liberalization reforms, dismantling the license raj, reducing state control, opening up significantly boosted GDP growth.
What was the difference?
Growth jumped from a sluggish, maybe 3.5% average, the so-called Hindu rate of growth, to a much more robust 6-7% annually, sometimes higher. It really demonstrates the impact of those policy shifts.
Okay, so bringing it all together then, what we've unpacked today really shows these challenges India faces aren't separate silos, are they?
Not at all.
Infrastructure, water, population, black money, education, labor laws, historical choices, they're deeply interconnected. It's like a complex web.
That's a great way to put it. A web impacting everything from daily life for individuals right up to the nation's global standing.
It really puts India's economic potential into perspective, doesn't it? The scale of what needs tackling.
That's right. And understanding these specific challenges, how they link together, is just crucial for grasping India's immense potential, and also for appreciating the strategic efforts needed to truly transform it.
From developing to develop.
Exactly, to become a developed and prosperous global economic power. It emphasizes the scale of the task ahead, no doubt.
So just to summarize or deep dive for everyone listening, India is clearly dynamic, it's growing fast, but its ambitious goals face these significant deep-seated challenges as meticulously detailed in the source material, the book by C.A. Anil K. Jain. But importantly, the book also points to ongoing government efforts and proposed solutions. There's a path forward being
Yes, and while these challenges are immense, the key takeaway is that addressing them through rigorous research, like in the book, strategic planning, and critically effective implementation of reforms, that's absolutely key to unlocking India's true potential, and ensuring that its impressive headline growth actually translates into widespread prosperity for its people.
So here's a final thought for you, the listener. Imagine Imagine what India, with its incredibly young, massive workforce, its vibrant startup ecosystem, what could it fully achieve if it systematically overcame these enduring challenges we've talked about? If it truly transformed into that developed, prosperous global economic power, what might that future actually look like? And what role could really strategic, well executed policy choices play in making that future a reality, something to think about?